Well, thanks very much for your time, colleagues. I'm here with Meghan Housewright, one of NFPA's attorneys that specializes in regulatory affairs. She's the U.S. Tag Administrator for ISO 2, for the products developed by ISO Technical Committee 268. Um, those of you who followed this research project we've been involved in really for about three three years here. Um, we blogged on this a few days ago, and it's one that we believe will have implications for what I'll call the smart campus zeitgeist. We think of campuses as cities within cities, and we know that whatever will happen in cities at large that host universities is likely to guide some of the conversation for infrastructure development strategy in the education facilities industry. So everybody knows our story, but I'd like the story of ISO. This is one of the documents that's developed by this committee. Just for your reference, those of you know, ISO has maybe the better part of maybe 100 committees, something like that. That's main committees, and these committees develop documents that have much longer character strings in their name. And so I think I'd like to just let Meghan speak freely, and I guess I'll focus a little bit about what the implications of a document like this would have for regulatory regimes that govern campus infrastructure of cities within cities. So welcome, Meghan, and please speak freely.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Meghan Housewright, and I am the Associate General Counsel for Government Affairs with the National Fire Protection Association. As Mike said, I've been working with the TC 268, and this is a technical committee that's focused on smart and sustainable communities. And
You want me to click something here for you?
Just
I want to see the map.
no, it's fine. The focus of the committee is on communities, but really on cities, and that as a major force in the world today, both economically and environmentally, and for people, how to improve those cities and make them sort of run the most efficiently as possible for both the administrators of the city and the people who live in them. And so some of the projects that the TC has focused on so far, one is a management system standard for sustainable communities, and that's really looking at how you manage a sustainability program within a city, and has some high-level principles that it tries to organize around the environmental impact, the attractiveness of the city, the resilience of the city, and that was recently, or is almost very close to publication. Another major project of the TC has been the city indicators, which came out of work done at the University of Toronto, trying to establish a standard set of indicators that could be used in different cities, so that everybody was sort of measuring different things, everything from number of miles or kilometer of roadway to educational attainment, all those sorts of things, in a standardized way, so you have a way to compare across cities. And then the last sort of branch of this is something that's really been a focus of a lot of Japanese interest, has been on quote smart community infrastructure, and that is more looking at how do you measure the performance of smart community infrastructure, and how do you judge the sort of maturity and progressing it in the type of infrastructure a community has. So that's a quick overview, and Mike, if you have any questions, or if anybody else has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Well, how will this affect the first cost of a new building? How will it affect the running cost of a new building? Running cost is usually 80% of what we're paying for these campuses, and that's always our discipline. Of course, we have the interstitial infrastructure, steam tunnels, telecommunications. We are also connected with the city water systems, city sewer systems. Very often there's roads that are shared. Sometimes we own some of the roads. And so that's why my experience with how regulations will come through federal agencies, for example, they won't always be run through an accredited ANSI standards developer. There's always this continual push and pull between private industry and government, and so I try to frankly work it from both ways. My expectation is that we've already seen what I call the first footfalls of smart city concepts find their way into legislative proceedings. I don't want to go. We cover a fair amount of that here, but I foresee, at least very much the metrics. One of the tenets, one of the core concepts of standardization is if you can measure it. Like NIST will say, the National Institute of Standards and Technology is about measuring stuff. And so when you start to measure a city and its sustainability, and I guess I'll focus on this infrastructure, not far behind, especially in the education industry where the level of debate on sustainability is very high. The effect of this document will likely come through the American National Standards Institute and the standards developers who will be proposing new documents, new consensus, any version of a consensus document, and that conversation starts. And of course, once it starts to become a guide, recommended practice, a code or a standard, then of course it does affect first year running cost.
I'd say that the technical committee is very young. I think it was established in, I want to say 2013. The U.S. didn't happen to get involved until 2014, or even actually 2015, at the beginning of 2015. So in terms of seeing where it's going and what type of impact it's going to have on cities and or the cities within cities, you really can't gauge that. I think it's very early in the process to know what type of impact it's going to have. It certainly is, for instance, the management system standard is one. There are lots of different sustainability program guides out there, I think, and this is another one. Whether it sort of begins to take the role of the major management system standards like 9000 or something, it really remains to be seen. I think that it's there's still a lot that needs to be worked out with how would decision makers and policymakers use a document like this?
So this is the management system standard you were speaking of. In general, management system standards don't seem to be well received, at least in our area right now. In global manufacturers that had to trade and sell, buy and sell across different nations needed a management system standard. And you and I have talked about one of the key markets of ISO. Mr. McKinley would even confirm this, is that they're developing documents for developing nations that don't have a middle class, that actually don't have managers. It's hard for us to imagine in a country like ours that's so well developed that there's not enough people to middle management. You come to appreciate middle management when you don't have it. And so that's what they're doing here. This offers an opportunity for those developing nations to maybe jump wrong and leapfrog over us and learn from our mistakes. So that's the rationale for a management system standards in manufacturing is understood, but in management of services generally are difficult to deal with, as ANSI will tell you. So how do you develop a standard for services? Arguably, the education industry is a standardization. They're delivering a service that results in a baccalaureate degree, right, or an associate's degree, or a PhD. So at the very core of the education industry is a standardization enterprise. They don't like to think of themselves that way, the way we do.
Right. um, and I think that raises a good point, because one of the things that any international standards project is going to run into is just the diversity of viewpoints, but in particular where cities themselves are extremely different from Ann Arbor, Michigan, is compared to, say, a city in India. It's just such it's apples and oranges. So it is definitely a challenge of creating something that's universal but also applicable. And I think that raises a good point that this may not be a document that is all that useful in the U.S. because there aren't preferred guides or preferred methods, or frankly, the desire to implement your very own system. But it may have a lot of traction in parts of the world where you need that boost of a structure that we take for granted.
Mm-hmm. A lot of what informs capital allocation in the education industry are organizations that brand, accredit, that have developed a degree of credibility among capital allocators in the education industry. Consultants, let's just call them generically consultants, and they provide benchmarking. They develop what I guess now called informatics. We've been doing that for years. It's just a new buzzword for something we've been doing all along. And when we think, we were talking earlier about an example from Japan, how these standards allocate capital, is that they may well not be as well understood in some of the larger research universities. The larger research universities are likely to go to a trade association, or they may go to one individual university would go to a consultant and say, how should I plan to upgrade my STEAM totals for the next 30 years? What kind of money do I need for that? How do I make them sustainable? You would also say, well, how much, what's the right size for a research university campus within a city? How do I do it? How do I plan for that? Those are philosophical decisions that very often need a reference. And some of those reference points, some of those data points are provided by the consultants. I'm not sure, in fact, I'll hazard a guess to say that almost none of the education industry is familiar enough, at least as far as the business side goes, with ANSI or the Geneva, what I call the Geneva organizations, that are developing these templates for regulators. So my attention to this, and this is one of about 10 that we follow, is largely based on, there's many reasons, but one of them is that I saw how quickly the sustainability zeitgeist, sort of root of the times, took over the education industry. My concern is that smart and sustainable cities will be the next bright, shiny object that gets put in front of the leadership, and there'll be some inefficiencies if they sort of execute the template. All well-meaning, of course. They want to do the right thing. Most everybody in our industry want to do the right thing, but very often there are intervening opportunists that could steer them away. And I feel that this is as clean a way. It's a document and it's a process that is as clean as I've seen to try to discover leading practice. So I've talked in very high-flown terms. I'm perfectly capable of talking about the details, but I felt that we wanted some view from somebody who's working at a very high level. You're traveling around quite a bit, I think, on this, right?
Right. Our next meeting for the TC is actually in Hangzhou, China, and one of the things that we're going to be discussing is the implementation standard, or an implementation standard for this management system, and it does get very tricky because you're right, people or decision makers want those. They want to know what the objectives are in more physical, real terms, or more like not the more quantitative, the more easier it is to measure, the better. But on the other hand, a document that says your sustainability management system will reduce your municipal waste generation by 30%. Well, that's not going to be, and if you don't do that, then you failed. I think that isn't going to work across the country or across the world. So, coming up with a way to benchmark without sort of being a heavy hand and telling people what the specific objective is, that will be, I think, an ongoing conversation within the TC.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you raised that because much of our industry is laboring under the green building initiatives that we call LEED certification. You might have heard of it. I think it's Leadership in Environmental Design, which I admire for how well that's been branded. It's essentially, you don't know this, but I often speak of standards and codes activity as regulatory products, because most standards developers are not just doing codes and standards, they're doing accreditation, training. They have a whole horizontal and vertical business plan for revenue capture that the term codes and standards doesn't really completely.
It's a broader.
Yeah, so we're talking regulatory products because ultimately NFPA, for example, is developing products for the federal government, for any level of government, to meet its public.
That is one stakeholder. The governmental side is one stakeholder in helping the enforcement of safety standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you often use the shorthand regulatory products. Getting back to my point is that, so if we were to look at what this document, the activity of this particular committee has compared with LEED, for example. Most self-respecting department managers want all their building to be LEED certified, and there's a whole public relations cadre that has evolved over the years to show your LEED plaque, to show you conform. And I believe you pay a certain percentage up front to get your building reviewed, and that it's been referenced. And that it was built that way. There's all sorts of different parts of the process that capture revenue. Now, is that revenue? Obviously that serves their purpose. Is LEED certification meeting the promise that of energy conservation, reduce carbon footprint, that whole constellation of objectives that LEED presumably met? So knowing what you know about that there, can we contemplate any kind of what we call branding zeitgeist for cities? We know that they often will compete and compare themselves in terms of how good the educational system is. And I think there are rankings of the school.
Sure, and I think there are even rankings of cities too. And you see them from time. The smartest city, or the most tech-savvy city, or the nicest place to live, or those types of rankings, which I know that cities do pay attention to, and they want to be on the good list, and they don't want to be on the bad list. And I think there are some that envision something like, particularly like the city indicators or 37120, would be a way to help have more transparency around how those lists are generated. But to your point on whether this is going to become a new brand for a city or a community, I think very much would be way too early to know. I know that certainly smart and certainly sustainability and certainly resilience are three buzzwords that are have people very interested.
Fills a lot of hotel rooms, and the airports are filled with sustainability experts around this time of year. Yeah, flying to and fro, providing content.
And so, the question is whether a standard like this gains acceptance the same way, say, 14,001 as a management system standard for environmental impact. If it has, presumably that's become a big a good signifier because people think there's a lot of validity in it. So I think that will be the challenge for the TC is making sure that if the desire is to have it become that same signifier of yes, this actually is a cut above by adhering to the standard, you actually are a cut above. Then if that turns out to be the case over time, then you might see that where it becomes.
When you drive into a town, welcome to Ann Arbor, welcome to Boston, ISO 268 certified. As long as there's money to be made on that, I suppose that's going to happen. Well, Megan, very much. We actually have the IEEE, we have another teleconference coming up here in the next few minutes. And I'm grateful for your time here. I know that we had some audio problems. I failed to bring my microphone to the conference here, and so I apologize. We'll do the best we can. Maybe we'll have our man in LA, Mike Toner, who will do a lot of audio cleanup for us on this. So, but I think I wanted people to hear firsthand from the person who's running the show from the American standpoint.
And I appreciate it too if anybody has any questions or wants to get involved with our technical advisory group. We're always looking for more participants. So you know how to get a hold of Mike, and he can direct you to me.
That's right. We just for the record, there are 2 other universities we've been working with, and I have collaborated with them. It's George Washington, Joe Fazio, and let's see. I guess I don't have here Jennifer.
Jen Schneider.
Jen Schneider. That's right.
From RTI.
That's right. That's right. So we talked at length. We have. It's been conceptually cleared that Meghan would come to the University of Michigan sometime in the future and likely address some of the faculty. And we have the Society of College and University Planners. We're going to be. We'll see what we can do. We'll come on site and explain to some of our faculty. As you know, I don't want to go out there because I don't want to make any more. I don't want to spend more. Oh, here's our faculty. Where's our faculty? Long story short, I'm trying to light a fire under faculty. They're very interested in this. Of course, they're stressed for time.
Yeah.
And you're talking about something that's 6 to 12 years out, which is what we do. That's what makes it difficult. So, again. It's my loss that we had to cut this short, Megan. But I hope to see more of you possibly in Ann Arbor within the year.
I would love to do.
Thanks very much.